Hello, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Get comfortable, adjust your pillow, settle into your blankets, and let yourself relax. There's nowhere else you need to be right now. Nothing else you need to do. Just listen and let yourself drift whenever you're ready. Tonight we're going on a journey back through time, back thousands of years, to a world that might seem familiar from stories you've heard, but was actually far stranger and harsher than most of us ever imagine. We're going to explore what it was really like to be a woman in biblical times. Not the sanitized Sunday school version, not the romanticized ancient world of flowing robes and peaceful desert sunsets, but the real day-to-day existence, the grinding labor, the complete powerlessness, the dangers that lurked in every pregnancy, every marriage, every single day of survival. Have you ever stopped to think about it? Really think about it. When you hear stories from the Bible, you probably picture women in modest dress, maybe carrying water jars, perhaps grinding grain. And yes, they did those things. But do you know how heavy those water jars were? 40 pounds. 40 pounds of clay and water, balanced on shoulders and heads, carried a mile or more, multiple times every single day. Do you know what that does to a spine by age 25? Or consider this. The average age of marriage for girls was 12 years old. Not women. Children, married to men often twice or 3 times their age, with no choice, no voice, no say in the matter. One day you're playing with other children. The next day you're a wife, expected to perform wifely duties, expected to become pregnant immediately. And if you don't, WELL, we'll get to that. Tonight you're going to learn things that might surprise you, things that might shock you, things that will probably make you grateful for the time and place you live in now. But don't worry, this is still a story designed to help you sleep. I'll guide you through this ancient world with a gentle voice and a steady pace. You can drift off whenever you feel ready. There's no test at the end. No need to remember every detail. Just let the story wash over you like waves on the shore. We're going to meet several women tonight. Most of them don't have names, because women's names often weren't recorded. They were just the wife of or the daughter of or the woman who. We're going to walk in their sandals, feel what they felt, experience in small measure what they endured day after day after day. We'll explore the daily labor that never ended, the childbirth that so often ended in death, the laws that marked women's bodies as shameful and unclean, the silence that was enforced in every public space, the complete dependence on men for survival, the absence of rights, of education, of any control over their own lives. And then we'll hear 3 specific stories from Scripture itself that reveal even darker truths about what women endured. Stories that are in the Bible but rarely discussed. Stories that matter. So take a deep breath with me now, in through your nose. Hold it, and out through your mouth. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw relax. Let your body sink into the bed beneath you. We're going back now, back 3,000 years. Back to a world of oil lamps and grinding stones, of city walls and desert paths, of complete and total patriarchy. Back to a time when being born female meant a life of hardship most of us can barely imagine. Let's begin. The sky is just beginning to lighten. Not sunrise yet, but that pale, gray time before dawn when the darkness finally starts to thin. You can hear a rooster crowing somewhere in the distance, then another, and another. The neighborhood is waking up. You're lying on a mat on the floor, not a bed. Just a woven mat, maybe with a thin blanket if your family can afford it. The floor is hard-packed earth, smooth from years of feet walking over it. It's cold. Even in this desert climate, the nights get cold, and that cold seeps up from the ground into your bones. Around you in this single room, your entire family sleeps, your husband beside you, your children curled nearby, your mother-in-law in the corner, your husband's brother and his family on the other side of the room. There are no separate bedrooms, no privacy, no personal space. Just this one room where everyone eats, sleeps, and lives. You hear movement. Your mother-in-law is already rising. She's older, more experienced, and she expects you to follow quickly. You push yourself up from the mat, your body aching. Your back always aches. You're only 23 years old, but your spine is already damaged from years of carrying water. Your shoulders have permanent grooves where the jars rest. Your neck is stiff every morning. You stand quietly, trying not to wake the children yet. They'll need to be fed soon, but first, there's water to fetch. There's always water to fetch. You reach for the clay jar near the doorway. It's large, about 3 feet tall, narrow at the top and round at the bottom. Empty, it weighs perhaps 8 or 10 pounds. But you're not carrying it empty. You're going to fill it at the well, and when it's full, it will weigh 45 pounds, maybe 50. You hoist it onto your shoulder, settling it into that familiar groove, the one that's worn into your flesh and bone over the years. The clay is cool and rough against your skin. You step outside into the pre-dawn darkness. Other women are already moving through the narrow streets. You can hear their footsteps, the soft shuffle of sandals on stone. You can hear the quiet conversations, the whispered greetings. This is women's time. The men are still sleeping. They'll wake later, after the water is fetched, after the grain is ground, after the bread is started. The walk to the well is about a mile, maybe a bit more. You make this walk at least 3 times a day, sometimes 4. Your family needs water for drinking, for cooking, for washing, and there's no plumbing, no tap to turn on. Just this well, shared by the entire community, and these jars and these women walking in the dark. Your feet know the path by heart. Past the house with the blue door, past the courtyard where the fig tree grows, down the sloping path where you have to be careful not to slip on loose stones, through the narrow passage between 2 walls where you have to turn sideways if someone's coming the other way. Other women join the procession. Some of them you know, some you don't. You all nod to each other, but you don't speak much. It's too early. And besides, you'll see each other at the well. The well is in the center of the lower town, near the gate. It's deep, very deep. You can hear the echo when someone drops the bucket down. It takes a long time for the bucket to hit water. That means it's a good well, a reliable well. It won't go dry even in the heat of summer. But it also means drawing water is hard work. You arrive and join the line of women, waiting. There's a hierarchy here. The older women, the respected women, the wives of important men, they go first. You wait your turn. You're young and not from a particularly important family, so you wait. While you wait, you stand with the jar still on your shoulder. You've learned not to set it down because picking it up again is harder than just holding it. Your muscles burn. Your shoulder throbs. But you wait. The woman in front of you is pregnant, very pregnant, maybe 8 months. She's breathing heavily, her hand on her lower back. She should rest. She should let others fetch her water. But there is no one else. Her husband certainly won't do it. Men don't fetch water. That's women's work, shameful work, degrading work. Men would rather die of thirst than be seen carrying a water jar through the streets. So pregnant or not, sick or not, injured or not, women fetch the water. Finally, it's your turn. You approach the well opening. Another woman is helping to lower the bucket on its rope. Down it goes, spinning slowly, the rope running through your hands. Down, down, down into the darkness. Finally, you hear the splash. You let the bucket sink, fill, then begin hauling it up. Hand over hand, pull the rope. The bucket gets heavier as it rises, water sloshing against its sides. Your arms shake with the effort. Pull, pull, pull. Finally, the bucket reaches the top. You pour the water carefully into your jar. It splashes and gurgles, echoing in the clay chamber. The jar gets heavier, heavier, Now it's full, 50 pounds of water. You hoist it back onto your shoulder. The weight settles into that groove again. Your whole body tilts slightly to compensate. You adjust your stance, finding your balance. And then you begin the walk home. Uphill now, always uphill on the way back. Your legs burn, your shoulder screams, your spine compresses under the weight. One foot in front of the other. You've done this thousands of times. You'll do it thousands more. Some women can balance the jar on their heads. You've tried, but you've never quite mastered it. So you carry it on your shoulder, and you endure the pain, and you walk. By the time you get home, the sun is starting to rise. Golden light is spilling over the hills. The day is beginning. You pour some of the water into smaller vessels for drinking, some into a bowl for washing, some you save for cooking later. And now it's time for the next task, grinding grain. You kneel on the floor next to the grinding stones. There are 2 stones, a large flat base stone and a smaller rounded hand stone. You pour grain onto the base stone, barley, probably. Maybe wheat, if it's been a good harvest. The grain is hard, like tiny pebbles. You grasp the hand stone with both hands. It's heavy, maybe 15 pounds, and you begin to push it forward over the grain, crushing it against the base stone. The sound is rhythmic, a grinding, scraping sound, a sound that will fill the next 2 or 3 hours of your morning. Push forward, rock back, push forward, rock back, over and over and over. The grain slowly breaks down, first into coarse chunks, then into smaller pieces, eventually into flour, though it will never be smooth and fine like modern flour. It will always have bits of stone in it, ground off from the grinding stones themselves. Everyone's teeth are worn down by middle age from eating bread filled with stone grit. Your knees ache from kneeling on the hard floor. Your shoulders ache from the repetitive motion. Your lower back aches from bending over the stones, but you keep grinding. You have to. The family needs bread. There is no other way to get flour except to make it yourself by hand on these stones, exactly like this. The sound becomes almost hypnotic after a while. Scrape, grind, scrape, grind. Other women in neighboring houses are doing the same thing. You can hear them through the walls. All over the town, all over the region, all over the ancient world, women are kneeling at grinding stones. The sound of women's labor. The sound that never stops. This is your morning. Water and grain, grain and water, every day, 7 days a week. There is no day of rest for this work. Food and water are needed every single day. So you fetch and you grind, fetch and grind, year after year after year. By the time you finish grinding, your children are awake and crying for food. Your husband is awake and expecting breakfast. And your day, your long, exhausting, endless day, is only just beginning. But let's pause here for a moment. Let's let that sink in. The weight of those jars, the distance of those walks, the hours of grinding, the permanent damage to young bodies, the absence of any choice or alternative. This was just the morning routine, every morning, for every woman, from the time they were old enough to carry water, usually around age 8 or 9, until they died or became too old and damaged to continue. Take a deep breath. Feel the comfort of your bed, the ease of your life, the water that flows from your tap, the food that requires no hours of grinding. And now let's continue deeper into this ancient world. Let's explore what happened to girls when they reached the age of 12. You're 11 years old, still a child, still playing with other girls in the narrow streets, still helping your mother with simple tasks, still learning about the world. You have questions. You have dreams. You have opinions about things, though you're learning not to voice them too loudly. And then one day, your father makes an arrangement. You're not told about it at first. Why would you be? Your opinion doesn't matter. Your feelings don't matter. Your father and another man, a man you may have never met, have negotiated a bride price. Money has changed hands. A contract has been made. You're going to be married. The man is 28 years old. Old enough to be your father. Actually older than your father was when you were born. But this is normal. Expected. Men marry when they're established, when they have wealth or a trade. Girls marry when they reach puberty. Sometimes even before. You're 12 when the wedding happens, 12 years old. You've just barely started menstruating. Your body is still that of a child, narrow hips, flat chest, no understanding of what's about to be required of you. The wedding feast happens at your father's house. There's food and wine and music. The adults are celebrating. You're sitting very still in your wedding clothes, probably the best dress your family owns, borrowed and adjusted to fit you. You're scared, but you don't say anything. Good girls don't complain. Obedient daughters accept what their fathers decide. You steal glances at the man who is now your husband. He's a stranger. You've perhaps seen him once or twice before today. He has a beard, lines around his eyes. He's tall and broad and utterly foreign to you. He catches you looking and smiles, but it doesn't comfort you. Nothing about this comforts you. As the evening wears on, the women begin preparing you. Your mother, your aunts, the older women of the family, they take you to a separate room. They give you vague instructions about what to expect. Be obedient. Don't resist. It will hurt, but that's normal. This is your duty now. No one explains what it is exactly. No one tells you in clear terms what's going to happen. Sex education doesn't exist. Girls are kept deliberately ignorant, and then thrust into adult situations with no preparation. You're trembling when they lead you to the marriage chamber. It's a small room. with a mat on the floor and an oil lamp flickering in the corner. The man, your husband, is already there. The door closes behind you. What happens next is traumatic. There's no other word for it. You're 12 years old and a grown man is expecting you to perform as a wife. You don't know what to do. You're terrified. It hurts. You cry, but quietly, because you've been taught that wives don't refuse their husbands, ever, for any reason. In the morning, there's blood on the sheet. This is expected. Required even. The sheet will be shown to both families as proof of your virginity. If there's no blood, you could be accused of not being pure, of having lain with another man. You could be sent back to your father in disgrace. You could even be killed. But there's blood, so everyone is satisfied. You're officially a wife now. Childhood is over, ended in a single night. You move into your husband's house, or more accurately, into his family's house. His parents are there, his brothers and their wives. You're the newest addition, which means you have the lowest status in the household. You do the worst jobs. You receive the smallest portions. You're corrected and criticized constantly. Your mother-in-law watches everything you do, ready to point out mistakes. Your husband treats you like property, because legally, that's what you are. You were purchased with a bride price. You belong to him now the way his livestock belongs to him. He can do with you as he wishes. He expects sex whenever he wants it. You learn not to say no. Refusal isn't an option. Husbands are permitted to discipline disobedient wives. You've seen women with bruises. You've heard the sounds through thin walls at night. You learn compliance. And within weeks, you realize you're pregnant. Your period doesn't come. Your breasts become tender. Morning sickness begins. You're 12 years old and you're carrying a child. Your body is still developing. Your hips are narrow. Your pelvis hasn't finished growing. But none of that matters. This is what marriage is for. This is your purpose. The pregnancy is hard. You're sick constantly in the first months, dizzy, exhausted, but there's no rest. You still fetch water. You still grind grain. You still do all the household work because, pregnant or not, the work must be done. Your body changes in ways that frighten you. Your belly swells. Your back aches, your ankles swell. Strange feelings move through you. The baby kicking, turning. It's alien and overwhelming. You're still a child yourself, and there's another person growing inside you. The older women see your fear. They try to prepare you. Childbirth is a woman's trial, they say. We all go through it. Pray that God gives you a son. Pray that you survive. That last part terrifies you. Pray that you survive. You didn't realize you might not. But as you listen to the women talk, you hear the stories. The woman 2 streets over who bled to death after her 3rd baby. The young bride last year who labored for 3 days before she and the baby both died. The woman whose baby was breech and couldn't be turned. 1 in 8 women die in childbirth. 1 in 8. And you're 12 years old, with a narrow pelvis and a child growing inside you. When labor finally begins, you're terrified. The pains start in your back, then wrap around to your belly. They're mild at first, but they get stronger, harder, closer together. Someone sends for the midwife, while the women of the household gather around you. The midwife is an older woman, experienced, but she has no medical training, no tools except her hands, no pain relief except maybe some wine or herbs. She examines you and tells you to wait. First babies take time, she says. The pain increases. Hours pass. 5 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours. You're sweating and crying and praying. The contractions are tearing through you, each one worse than the last. You're on a birthing stool, squatting, gravity helping the baby descend. Women support you on each side. Push, the midwife says. So you push until you see stars. You push until you think you might split in two. You push until there's a sound, a cry, and suddenly there's a baby, slippery and red and screaming. A boy, someone says. Relief floods the room. A son. Your first child is a son. Your husband will be pleased. Your value has just increased. They cut the cord with a bronze knife. They wash the baby in water and rub him with salt and oil. They wrap him tightly in strips of cloth. Someone places him in your arms. You're only 12 years old, and you're a mother. But you're also bleeding. A lot, more than seems normal. The midwife is pressing on your belly, trying to stop the flow. The other women are exchanging worried looks. You feel weak, dizzy, cold despite the warm room. For a terrifying few minutes you think this is it. This is how you die. 12 years old, bleeding out on a birthing stool, having just given birth to a son you'll never see grow up. But the bleeding slows. Eventually it stops. The midwife packs you with cloth and tells you to rest. You've survived. This time. But you know with absolute certainty that you'll have to do this again and again and again, because your husband expects many children, sons preferably, to carry on his name. You'll be pregnant most of your adult life. You'll give birth 8, maybe 10 times if you live that long, and each time you'll face that same risk. 1 in 8 chance of death. Lying there, 12 years old, holding your newborn son, you realize this is your life now. Marriage, pregnancy, childbirth, over and over until your body gives out or death takes you. No education, no choices, no dreams beyond survival. This is what it meant to be a woman. This is what it meant to be a wife. Your childhood ended at 12, and your life became an endless cycle of bearing children for a man who owns you. Take a breath now. Let that reality settle. 12 years old, married to a stranger, pregnant immediately, childbirth at 13, and this was normal, expected. This was every girl's future. The girls in these times didn't dream of careers or adventures or education. They didn't dream at all. They simply endured, day after day after day. And there's more to understand, because beyond the labor and the childbearing there were laws, religious laws, that made women's very bodies shameful. Let's talk about that next. You're sitting in the main room of the house, grinding grain like you do every morning when you feel it. That familiar cramping in your lower belly, that wetness. You know immediately what it means. Your period has started. For women in modern times, this might be an inconvenience, perhaps uncomfortable, but manageable. You might take some medicine for the cramps, use a pad or tampon, and continue with your day. But you're not in modern times. You're in ancient Israel. And according to Levitical law, you've just become unclean. You stand up from the grinding stones. You don't need to announce it. The women in the household know. They can see it in your face. Your mother-in-law nods toward the door. It's time for you to leave. Yes, leave. The law is clear. A woman during her menstrual period is ritually impure, And not only is she impure, but everything she touches becomes impure. Everyone she touches becomes impure. She's a walking contamination, a source of defilement that must be separated from the community. You gather a few things, a blanket, a water skin, some bread, and you walk outside out of the house to the small tent set up at the edge of the property. This is where you'll spend the next 7 days, alone, exiled for the crime of having a female body that functions exactly as God designed it to. The tent is small, barely large enough to lie down in. There's a mat on the ground and nothing else, no comfort, no amenities. Just you in this tiny space where you'll wait for your body to finish its monthly cycle. The first day, the cramps are terrible. You curl up on the mat, arms wrapped around your belly, trying to breathe through the pain. There's no medicine, no heating pad, no comfortable bed. Just pain and isolation. You're bleeding, of course, but there are no pads, no tampons, no menstrual cups. Just strips of cloth that you'll have to wash later. The blood soaks through, staining the fabric, staining the mat beneath you. You feel dirty, uncomfortable, ashamed, because that's what the law teaches you to feel. Shame. Your body is doing something completely natural, something necessary for human reproduction, and you're told it makes you unclean, defiled, unacceptable in the sight of God. You can't go to the temple during this time, can't participate in worship, can't make offerings, can't even stand in the court of women, that outer courtyard as close as women are allowed to get to the Holy of Holies. Your bleeding body bars you from approaching the divine. You can't touch anyone. If your husband touches you, he becomes unclean until evening and has to wash himself. If you sit on something, it becomes unclean. If you lie on something, it becomes unclean. You're like a disease, something to be avoided until you're clean again. The loneliness is crushing. You're isolated from your family. Your children can't come to you. Your husband certainly won't. Even the other women keep their distance. You're alone with your cramps, your bleeding, your discomfort, and your shame. 7 days, that's how long you must wait. 7 full days, even if the bleeding stops after 3 or 4. The law requires 7 days of separation, a week of exile for having a female body. On the 7th day, you're finally allowed to return. But first you have to wash yourself, wash your clothes, purify yourself. And even then you're not fully clean according to the religious authorities. Technically, you're supposed to make a sin offering at the temple. 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons sacrificed to atone for the impurity of your menstruation. Yes, you read that correctly. A sin offering, as if menstruating is a sin, as if your body's natural function is something that requires atonement, forgiveness, the shedding of blood to make right. But wait, it gets worse. If you give birth, the period of impurity is even longer. If you have a son, you're unclean for 7 days, just like with menstruation. Then you must wait 33 additional days before you're fully purified, 40 days total. But if you have a daughter, if you give birth to a female child, then you're unclean for 2 weeks. And you must wait 66 additional days before you're fully purified. 80 days total. Think about that. Having a daughter makes you twice as impure as having a son. The law itself declares that female babies are more defiling than male babies. From birth, girls are marked as lesser, as more contaminating, as further from holiness. What does this teach women? What does this teach girls? It teaches them that their bodies are shameful, that their femaleness is a source of impurity, that they are by nature further from God than men are. Men don't have these restrictions. Men don't have to leave their homes once a month. Men don't have periods of mandated isolation. Men aren't told their natural bodily functions make them unclean before God. Only women, only girls, only female bodies. You spend roughly 1 week out of every month in that tent. That's 13 weeks a year, a quarter of your adult life spent in isolation, being punished for having a uterus. And during that time, you still have to provide for yourself. You still have to eat, drink, manage your bleeding with cloth strips, and hope the stains come out when you wash them. You still experience the cramps, the fatigue, the discomfort. But you experience it alone, marked as unclean, cast out from community and family. The psychological impact is enormous. Month after month, year after year, you're taught that your body is shameful, that the very thing that allows you to carry children, the thing that society demands from you, makes you impure. You internalize this. You begin to believe it. You begin to see yourself as lesser, as contaminated, as further from holiness and goodness and God's presence than men are. And this shame shapes everything. The way you move through the world, the way you think about yourself, the way you accept your powerlessness, because after all, you're just an unclean woman. What right do you have to demand anything? I imagine living like this. Imagine being a young girl, getting your first period, and being immediately sent away. Imagine the confusion, the fear, the sense that something is wrong with you. Imagine returning home and seeing the wary looks, the careful avoidance, everyone treating you like you're contaminated. And then it happens again the next month, and the next, and the next. Every single month for the next 30 or 40 years, until menopause finally ends the cycle. That's hundreds of weeks spent in isolation, hundreds of weeks being marked as unclean, hundreds of times being reminded that your female body is shameful and defiling. The Levitical purity laws are found in the Torah, in the books given by God to Moses. These aren't cultural practices that developed over time. These are religious laws attributed to divine command, which means women are taught that God himself declared their bodies impure. God, the creator, the all-knowing, the source of all holiness, looked at women's bodies and said, unclean. How do you maintain any sense of worth under that? How do you believe you have value when the very foundation of your religious faith teaches you that your biology makes you contaminated? You can't. Not really. So you accept it. You internalize the shame. You sit in that tent month after month, year after year, and you believe what you've been taught, that you are lesser, that you are unclean, that you are by nature further from holiness than men. And this is just one aspect of the systemic devaluation of women in biblical times. We haven't even talked yet about the legal status of women, the complete absence of rights, the inability to own property, testify in court, or have any say in your own life. Let's talk about that now. Let's talk about being property. Picture yourself in a courtroom. Well, not a courtroom like we have today, more like the city gate where the elders sit and hear disputes. A case is being presented. Two neighbors arguing about property boundaries. Each man presents his side. Each man brings witnesses. You were there. You saw exactly what happened. You know which man is telling the truth and which is lying. You could resolve this dispute in seconds with your testimony. But you're a woman, so your testimony doesn't count. Legally, you cannot testify in court. Your word has no weight. Your knowledge, your truth, your eyewitness account. None of it matters, because you're female. This isn't just cultural tradition. This is law. Women cannot serve as witnesses in legal proceedings. Their testimony is considered inherently unreliable, untrustworthy, invalid. If you're the victim of a crime, you cannot testify against your attacker. If you witness an injustice, you cannot speak up. If you know the truth, you must remain silent and watch as men who weren't there, who don't know, make decisions based on incomplete information. You have no voice in the systems of justice. You are, legally speaking, not a credible person, but it goes deeper than that. You also have no legal status as an independent person. When you're a child, you belong to your father. He has complete authority over you. He decides who you marry, when you marry, where you live. He can sell you if he wishes. Yes, sell you not in the language of slavery, but in the language of marriage. But functionally, it's the same. He can transfer ownership of you to another man in exchange for money. When you marry, ownership transfers to your husband. You are his property now. He makes all decisions. He controls all resources. He determines where you live, what you do, who you see. You have no say. Can you own property? No, not independently. Any inheritance you might receive goes to your husband to manage. Any money you might somehow earn belongs to your husband. You cannot buy or sell anything without his permission. You cannot make contracts. You cannot conduct business. Even your own children don't belong to you. They're your husband's children. He has legal authority over them. If he dies, they go to his male relatives, not to you. You're the mother who carried them, bore them, nursed them, raised them. But legally, they're not yours. Can you divorce? No. Only men can initiate divorce. A man can divorce his wife for almost any reason. She displeases him as sufficient grounds according to Deuteronomy. He can simply write her a certificate of divorce and send her away. But you're stuck, no matter how badly he treats you. No matter if he beats you, starves you, neglects you, brings other wives into the home. You cannot leave. You cannot divorce him. Your only hope is that he decides to divorce you. But then you're a divorced woman, stigmatized, and likely destitute. Because what happens to divorced women? Or widows? They have no means of support. They can't work most jobs, that's men's work. They can't own property. They have no legal standing. So they become dependent on male relatives who may or may not be willing to help. Or they become destitute, begging, starving, selling the only thing they have left, their bodies. The Bible frequently mentions widows and orphans as the most vulnerable people in society, and they were. Widows had no husband to own them, which meant they had no legal protection, no guaranteed food or shelter, no place in the social order. They were invisible, disposable, often forgotten. Let's talk about education. Can you learn to read? No. Education is for boys and men. Girls are kept at home, learning household tasks from their mothers. Reading Torah? That's for men. Learning the law? Men. Studying with rabbis? Men. Participating in scholarly discussions? Men. You grow up illiterate. You will die illiterate. The words of your own scripture are a mystery to you. You hear them read aloud in synagogue well. You hear them from the women's section, separated by a barrier so the men aren't distracted by your presence. But you cannot read them yourself, cannot study them, cannot interpret them, cannot question them. Your religious life is entirely mediated by men, male priests, male elders, male teachers, male prophets, male messiahs. God is referred to with male pronouns, described in male terms. Male is holy, male is pure, male is made in God's image. And you? You're unclean 7 days a month. You're not allowed in the inner courts of the temple. You can't make offerings directly. Your husband does that for you. You can't teach or preach or lead. In the synagogue, you sit in a separate section, the women's section, usually in the back or behind a screen or up in a gallery. You're not counted in the minyan, the quorum of 10 required for certain prayers. Only men count. You're there, physically present, but you don't count. If you have a question about Scripture, you can't ask directly. You'd have to have your husband or father ask for you. Your curiosity, your spiritual hunger, your desire to understand God, all of it must be filtered through male intermediaries. Paul would later write, "Let the women remain silent in the churches." But honestly, women were already silent. They'd been trained to silence from birth, taught that their voices didn't matter, that their thoughts were less important, that their role was to listen, not speak, to obey, not question, to serve, not lead. Think about what this does to a person. To grow up knowing your opinion is worthless, that your testimony doesn't count, that you cannot own anything, control anything, decide anything, that your entire life is determined by men first your father, then your husband, then your sons, if you outlive your husband. You're not a person with agency. You're a possession, a womb to produce children, a pair of hands to do labor, a body to satisfy male needs, but not a person, not really, not legally, not spiritually, not in any way that matters. The silence is enforced everywhere. In the home, you defer to your husband. In the community, you defer to the elders. In religious spaces, you defer to the priests and rabbis. Your voice is never the authoritative one, never the final word, never heard at all unless a man decides to listen. And if you try to speak up, if you assert yourself, if you question or challenge or demand to be heard, you're called rebellious, disobedient, unwomanly. You're punished, shamed, put back in your place. So you learn to be quiet. You learn to make yourself small. You learn that survival means compliance, submission, silence. You swallow your thoughts. You bury your questions. You accept that this is just how things are and how they'll always be. You watch your daughters grow up and you teach them the same lessons. Be quiet. Be obedient. Don't question. Don't resist. This is your role. This is your fate. This is what it means to be a woman. And the tragic thing? Many women internalized this so deeply that they defended it. They policed other women. They enforced the rules that oppressed them because they'd been taught those rules were divine, God-given, natural, right. When you're told from birth that this is God's design, that this is how things should be, that questioning it is sinful. You stop questioning. You start believing. You become a participant in your own subjugation. The silence wasn't just enforced from outside. Eventually, it came from within. Women silenced themselves, policed their own thoughts. crushed their own desires for something more, because wanting more, dreaming of more, believing you deserved more, that was dangerous. That was the path to disappointment and punishment and pain. So you stay silent, you stay small, you endure. Day after day, year after year, lifetime after lifetime, generations of women living without voice, without rights, without power, living as property, as afterthoughts, as people who didn't quite count. Take a breath. Feel the weight of that silence, the crushing absence of agency, the complete powerlessness that defined women's existence. And we haven't even talked yet about the most dangerous part of being a woman in biblical times, the part that killed so many, the physical reality of constant childbearing in a world without medical care. Let's go there now. You're pregnant again. This is your 5th pregnancy in 7 years of marriage. You're 19 years old, and your body is already showing the strain. Your first child, a son, is 6 years old now. Your 2nd pregnancy ended in miscarriage at 4 months. Your 3rd child, a daughter, is 3. Your 4th pregnancy nearly killed you, a son who came out wrong feet first, and the midwife had to reach inside and try to turn him. He survived. You survived. Barely. And now you're pregnant again. Because your husband expects children, many children, sons especially. That's what wives are for. You know women who've had 10 pregnancies, 12, 15, each one taking a toll on their bodies, each one carrying the risk of death. The women in your community talk about childbirth in hushed tones. They share stories, warnings, advice. So-and-so labored for 3 days before the baby finally came. The midwife said if the bleeding doesn't stop within an hour, there's nothing to be done. She was so small, her pelvis too narrow. They both died, 1 in 8. That's the statistic that haunts you. 1 in 8 women die in childbirth or from complications afterward. 1 in 8. If you have 8 pregnancies in your lifetime, and many women had more, that means you're almost certain to face a life-threatening situation at least once, maybe more. And there's no hospital to rush to, no emergency surgery, no blood transfusions, no antibiotics, just midwives with their hands and their experience, and prayers that God will be merciful. This current pregnancy is hard. You're sick more than you were with the others. You can't keep food down. You're exhausted all the time. Your back aches constantly from the weight of your belly, combined with the work you still have to do. Because pregnant or not, the water still needs fetching. The grain still needs grinding. The children still need feeding. The work never stops. You're showing now, your belly swollen and round. The baby moves inside you, kicks and rolls and hiccups. Sometimes the movement is reassuring. The baby is alive, active, growing, but sometimes it's uncomfortable, even painful. A foot jabbing into your ribs, an elbow pressing against your bladder, the constant pressure on your spine. Your ankles swell, your hands swell. You have trouble sleeping because no position is comfortable. Lying on your back makes it hard to breathe. Lying on your side, the weight pulls awkwardly. You wake up multiple times each night, needing to relieve yourself, your bladder compressed by the baby. The other women look at you with a mixture of sympathy and wariness. They've been through this. They know what's coming. Some offer advice. Eat dates in the last month. They say it helps with labor. Walk as much as you can, even when you don't want to. Pray for a quick birth. But some just look at you with sadness. because they're thinking what you're thinking. Will you survive this one? As you get closer to your due time, the fear intensifies. You've seen death in childbirth. You were there 3 years ago when your neighbor, a young woman just 16 years old, labored for 2 days and then started bleeding. The blood just kept coming, soaking through cloths, pooling on the floor. The midwife tried everything: pressure, herbs, prayers. Nothing worked. The girl died while her newborn son cried in the corner. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. You helped wash her body for burial. You were there last year when another woman's baby got stuck. The midwife could feel the baby's head, but it wouldn't come down. Wouldn't move hour after hour after hour. The woman pushed until she had no strength left. Pushed until she was delirious with pain and exhaustion. The baby died inside her. She died 2 days later from infection, her body ravaged by the prolonged labor. These images haunt you as your own labor approaches. You try not to think about them. You try to have faith that God will protect you. But the fear is always there, underneath everything. And then, one night, you wake to wetness between your legs. Your water has broken. Labor is beginning. At first, it's just cramping, tightening across your belly, then releasing. Uncomfortable, but manageable. You wake your mother-in-law. She sends your husband to fetch the midwife. The other women in the household start preparing heating water, gathering clean cloths, setting up the birthing area. The pains get stronger, harder. They start coming closer together. You try to walk, try to stay upright. Gravity helps, they say, but it's getting difficult to stand. The contractions are taking your breath away. The midwife arrives. She's an older woman, weathered and experienced. She's delivered hundreds of babies. She's also watched dozens of women die. She examines you internally with her fingers, checking how dilated you are, how the baby is positioned. The head is down, she says. That's good news. Head first is normal, safer. But you've got hours yet. Hours you settle in for the long ordeal ahead. The pain intensifies. It's not like the pain of injury. It's deeper, more primal. It comes in waves, building and building, until you think you can't endure another second, and then it peaks and slowly recedes. For a moment you can breathe, and then it starts building again. The women support you. Your mother-in-law holds your arm. Your sister-in-law wipes your forehead with a cool cloth. The midwife checks you periodically, her experienced hands assessing your progress. Still not ready, she says. Walk if you can, so you walk. You pace the small room, pausing when contractions hit, gripping the wall or someone's arm until the pain passes. You walk for hours. Time becomes meaningless. There's only the pain, the brief respite, then pain again. You're moved to the birthing stool when the midwife finally says, "It's time." The birthing stool is low to the ground, with a U-shaped seat that allows the baby to emerge downward. You squat on it, women supporting you on each side. Your thighs are shaking. You're exhausted already, and the hardest part is just beginning. Push when you feel the urge, the midwife instructs. The urge comes in overwhelming pressure, your body demanding that you bear down. So you push. You push with everything you have. The pain is indescribable. It feels like you're being torn apart from the inside. You cry out. You can't help it. Good, the midwife says. Again, push again. You push through contraction after contraction. Your throat is raw from screaming. Sweat pours down your face, your back. Your muscles tremble with exhaustion. You push until you think you might die from the effort. And then finally the midwife says, "I can see the head." One more big push. You gather every last bit of strength you have left. You push with a guttural cry, push past the burning, tearing pain, push until the baby slips out in a rush of fluid and blood. The relief is immediate and overwhelming. The pressure is gone. The pain recedes to a dull ache. You hear crying the baby's first breaths. "A girl," the midwife announces. "A girl, not a son." You see the disappointment in your mother-in-law's face. Your husband will be disappointed, too. Girls are less valued. Girls require dowries. Girls leave the family when they marry. But still, she's alive, you're alive. That's something. The midwife cuts the cord with a bronze knife. She ties it off with thread. She hands the baby to another woman to be washed and wrapped while she attends to you. The placenta comes next a few more pushes, less painful than before. The midwife examines it carefully, making sure it's complete. If any pieces are left inside, you'll develop infection and likely die within a week. "It's all here," she says. "Good news, but you're bleeding. A lot." "This is normal," the midwife assures you. But she's pressing hard on your belly, trying to make your uterus contract, trying to stop the flow. The other women exchange worried glances. They've seen this before. They know when bleeding crosses from normal to dangerous. You feel weak, dizzy, cold. Someone wraps you in blankets. Someone else brings you water. The midwife is still pressing on your belly, massaging it, trying to stem the blood loss. Minutes pass, long, terrifying minutes. The bleeding slows. Not completely, but enough. The immediate crisis has passed. You're going to survive this time. They help you to a mat on the floor. They bring you the baby. She's so tiny, so fragile. She's nursing already, instinctively searching for your breast. The sensation is strange, but not unpleasant. You lie there holding your daughter, feeling the warmth of her small body against yours. You're alive. She's alive. You've survived another birth. But you know this won't be the last. Your husband will want more children. Sons, especially since this one is a girl. In a year, maybe less, you'll be pregnant again, and you'll face this same ordeal, this same risk, this same terror. How many more times can you survive it? How many more births before your luck runs out? Before something goes wrong that the midwife can't fix? Before you become another woman who died in childbirth? Another name whispered in warning to other young wives? You don't let yourself think about it. You can't. You just hold your daughter and try to feel grateful for this moment, for breath in your lungs, for the baby in your arms, for having survived one more time. The next 40 days you'll be considered unclean because you gave birth to a girl, twice as long as if you'd had a son. You'll recover slowly, your body healing from the trauma of birth. You'll bleed for weeks. Your breasts will become engorged and painful as your milk comes in. Your stitches, if you tore, which you probably did, will hurt every time you move. And then, when the 40 days are done, when you've made your purification offering at the temple, when you're considered clean again, life will go back to normal. Water to fetch, grain to grind, children to care for, a husband to serve, and eventually, inevitably, another pregnancy. This is the cycle. This is women's fate. Pregnancy after pregnancy until their bodies give out or death claims them. No choice. no control. No way to stop the cycle except through death or infertility, and infertility brought its own horrors, as we'll see in one of the stories coming up. But for now, rest. Breathe. Let the weight of this reality sink in. The constant childbearing, the lack of medical care, the 1 in 8 chance of death with every pregnancy, the bodies worn out by age 35, the mothers who never got to see their children grow up. This was the price of being female. This was the burden women carried. This was their service, their sacrifice, their expected role. To bear children at any cost, even at the cost of their own lives. Take a deep breath. Feel the comfort and safety of your modern life. The medical care available to you. The choices you have. The control over your own fertility. These things are precious. These things are new. For most of human history, this was not the reality. Now, let's move into the daily grind. The endless, exhausting labor that filled every waking hour of women's lives. The sun is fully up now. You've already fetched water that pre-dawn journey to the well and back. You've already ground grain for 2.5 hours, your knees aching on the hard floor. You've already started bread dough, mixing the flour with water and a bit of saved dough from yesterday to help it rise. Now the dough needs to rest, so you move to the next task. There's always a next task. The work never ends. You need to check on the goats. Your family has 3 goats, a valuable asset. They provide milk, which you turn into cheese and yogurt. Eventually, when they're old or injured, they'll provide meat. But for now, they need to be milked, watered, and moved to fresh grazing. You take a clay bowl and go to where the goats are tethered. They recognize you and bleat in greeting. You sit on a small stool next to the first goat and begin milking her. Your hands know the motion by heart squeeze, pull, squeeze, pull. The milk streams into the bowl with a rhythmic sound. Squeeze, pull, squeeze, pull. It's peaceful, actually. One of the few quiet moments in your day. Just you and the goats and the early morning sounds birds calling. Neighbors starting their day, children playing somewhere nearby, but it doesn't last long. You finish milking all 3 goats, and now you need to take them to pasture. There's a common grazing area outside the city walls where animals can feed. You lead the goats out through the narrow streets, using a stick to keep them moving in the right direction. Other women and children are doing the same thing, a small procession of people and animals heading out to the fields. You'll leave the goats there for the day, watched by some of the older children who take turns shepherding. Later, before sunset, you'll come back to collect them and bring them home for the night. Walking back into town, you meet your neighbor at the well. She's also making another water run. You fall into step together, jars balanced on your shoulders. "How are you feeling?" she asks. She knows you're recovering from childbirth just a few weeks ago. "Tired," you admit. "The baby doesn't sleep well. Up every 2 hours to nurse." She nods sympathetically. "It gets easier, eventually." You've heard this before. You're not sure you believe it, but you appreciate the gesture of comfort. Back home, the bread dough has risen enough. Now comes the baking. You need to get the oven hot. The oven is outside, built into the courtyard wall, a dome-shaped structure made of clay. You've already collected fuel earlier in the week. Dried dung from the goats and donkeys. Yes, dung. Animal waste, dried in the sun until it's hard and odorless, burns hot and is one of the primary fuel sources for cooking. You pile the dried dung cakes into the oven and light them with coals from yesterday's fire that have been carefully kept alive overnight. The dung catches and begins to burn, heating the oven's interior. The smell isn't pleasant, but you're used to it. Everyone cooks this way. While the oven heats, you shape the bread dough. You pull off pieces and flatten them into round, flat loaves. Your hands are practiced at this. You've made bread nearly every day since you were old enough to reach the grinding stones. When the oven is hot enough, you test it by flicking water inside. If it sizzles instantly, it's ready. You use a long wooden paddle to place the loaves inside. They stick to the hot interior walls of the oven, baking quickly. The smell of baking bread fills the courtyard. It's one of the better smells of your day. While the bread bakes, you turn your attention to the next task, laundry. You have a pile of tunics and head coverings that need washing. There's no washing machine, of course. No running water. Just you, a large clay basin, and the water you've carried from the well. You fill the basin with water and add some ash from the fire. The ash contains lye, which helps clean the fabric. You scrub each piece of clothing against itself, working the ash-water mixture through the fabric. Your hands are already rough and cracked from work, and the lye makes them worse. Your knuckles bleed sometimes from the constant exposure to harsh soap and rough fabric. Scrub, scrub, scrub. Rinse. Wring out. Hang to dry. Each piece takes time. Each piece requires effort. And you're doing this while also keeping an eye on the bread in the oven and listening for the baby who might wake and need nursing, and watching the toddler who's playing nearby and needs to be kept from wandering off or getting into danger. You retrieve the bread from the oven before it burns. The loaves are perfect golden brown, crispy on the outside, soft inside. You set them aside to cool and prepare for the midday meal. The midday meal is simple. Bread, obviously. Some goat cheese you made yesterday. Olives from the small tree in your courtyard. Maybe some lentils if there are any left from last night. You serve your husband and sons first. They eat their fill. Then your daughters, then your mother-in-law. You eat last whatever is left over. Often it's not much. After the meal, there's cleaning up, washing the bowls and cups more water from your precious supply, sweeping the floor-packed earth that needs constant sweeping to keep the dust down, checking on the baby. Yes, she needs nursing again. You sit and nurse her while continuing to think about all the tasks still ahead. The afternoon stretches before you. There's always more to do. Always you need to check on the olive oil supply. Your family has a small press for making olive oil from the olives you harvest each fall. The process is laborious. The olives must be crushed in a large stone basin. Then the pulp must be pressed to extract the oil. You turn the heavy pressing stone, your arms straining with the effort. The oil drips slowly into a collection vessel below. This oil will be used for cooking, for lamps, for anointing bodies, for medicine. It's precious and labor-intensive to produce. You need to spin wool. There's a basket of cleaned wool waiting for your attention. You sit with your spindle, a simple wooden tool, and begin the repetitive process of spinning wool fibers into thread. Your hands move constantly, pulling and twisting, pulling and twisting. The thread grows slowly. This thread will eventually be woven into fabric. That fabric will be sewn into clothing. Everything made by hand. Every step requiring hours of labor. You need to prepare for the evening meal. This will be more substantial than the midday meal, probably a lentil stew with vegetables if you have them. You sort through the lentils, picking out small stones. You peel and chop onions if there are any. You add water and set the pot near the fire to cook slowly. You need to fetch the goats from pasture. The sun is getting lower. Time to bring the animals home for the night. You walk back out to the grazing area, your legs tired from all the walking you've done today. You collect your 3 goats and herd them back through the city streets to your home. You need to milk them again. Evening milking, the same process as morning. Squeeze, pull, squeeze, pull. The milk goes into vessels to settle overnight. Tomorrow you'll skim off the cream and start making butter or cheese. You need to put the children to bed. The older ones can put themselves down, but the little ones need attention. The toddler needs help. The baby needs nursing again. You lie down with them on their sleeping mats, nursing the baby while the toddler curls against your side. You're so tired, so very tired. But you can't sleep yet. There's still more to do. You need to serve the evening meal. Your husband is home from his work. He expects food ready. You ladle stew into bowls. You offer bread. You make sure everyone is served. You eat standing up, quickly, whatever remains. You need to clean up after the meal. More washing. More sweeping. More tending to the endless details of household management. You need to prepare for tomorrow. Soak grain for tomorrow's grinding. Set aside dough starter for tomorrow's bread. Check that there's enough fuel for tomorrow's fire. Plan what meals you'll make with what food you have left. Finally, as full darkness falls and the oil lamps are lit, you can rest. But even then, there might be mending to do. Clothes that need repairing, wool that needs carding, children who can't sleep and need comfort. Your husband might want you, might expect you to perform your wifely duties despite your exhaustion. You don't refuse. You can't refuse, so even your rest isn't truly rest. This is your day. Every day. 7 days a week. No weekends. No vacation. No sick days. No retirement. From the time you wake before dawn until the time you finally sleep at night, you are working. Your body is a tool for labor. Your hands are never idle. Your mind is always tracking the 100 tasks that need doing. And this is not unusual. This is not a particularly hard day. This is just normal. This is what every woman's life looked like. Day after day after day, year after year after year, from childhood until death. The labor was endless, exhausting, repetitive, necessary. Without your work, your family would not eat, would not have clean clothes, would not have functioning tools and supplies. Everything depended on women's labor that was unpaid, unrecognized, taken for granted. Your body breaks down under this constant strain. By your mid-30s, your back is permanently bent. Your hands are gnarled. Your knees are damaged from years of kneeling. Your shoulders slope from years of carrying heavy loads. You look old, much older than your actual years, because your body has been used up by work, and there's no escape. You can't hire help unless your family is wealthy, which most aren't. You can't buy pre-made goods. You can't reduce the workload. The work simply has to be done, and women do it, because that's what women are for. The men have their work, too, of course. Farming, if your family has land, trade or craft work. But men's work has breaks, has seasons of less intensity, has community recognition. A man who's skilled at his trade is respected, honored. His work is seen as valuable, but women's work, it's invisible, expected, taken for granted. No one praises you for grinding grain perfectly. No one honors you for fetching water efficiently. No one recognizes the skill it takes to manage a household, raise children, produce goods, and keep everyone fed and clothed. It's just women's work, not real work, not important work, just what women do. And when you're too old or too broken to do it anymore, then you're a burden. You're the old woman in the corner who can't contribute, who eats but doesn't produce, who takes up space and resources. There's no pension, no retirement home, no social security, just the hope that your sons will take care of you out of duty or pity. This was women's reality. This was the endless grind that consumed their lives. Work without end, without recognition, without escape. Take a breath. Let yourself rest. Feel the ease of your modern conveniences, the machines that do your washing, the stores where you buy food already prepared, the fact that you have time, actual free time, to do things other than basic survival labor. These women had no such time, no hobbies, no relaxation, no self-care, just work, pregnancy, childbirth, more work, and eventually death. Their bodies used up in service to family and society. And now let's turn to some specific stories. Stories from Scripture itself that illustrate even more dramatically the suffering and powerlessness of women in biblical times. Let me tell you about Tamar first. Her name was Tamar. We know this because her story is recorded in Genesis chapter 38. But that's about all we know about her as a person. We don't know what she looked like. We don't know her personality, her dreams, her fears. We know only what happened to her, and it's a story that reveals just how completely vulnerable women were. Imagine you're Tamar. You're young, maybe 14 or 15. You've been given in marriage to a man named A. He's the son of Judah, one of the patriarchs. This should be a good match, a secure future. But A is not a good man. The Bible describes him simply as wicked in the sight of the Lord. We don't know what Ah's wickedness entailed. Was he cruel, violent, immoral? We're not told. But whatever it was, God struck him down. He died. And suddenly you're a widow. At 15 years old, you're a widow. Now, in the modern world, being widowed is tragic, but manageable. You'd have legal rights. You could inherit property. You could get a job. You could remarry or choose not to. You'd have options. But you're not in the modern world. You're in ancient Canaan, and you're a widow, which means you have no legal standing, no property, no income, no security. A widow was one of the most vulnerable people in society. Without a husband, you had no protection, no status, no means of survival. But there was a law, a provision for widows like you. It was called levirate marriage. If a man died without having sons, his brother was obligated to marry the widow and father children with her. The first son born from this union would be considered the dead man's heir, preserving his name and lineage. So Judah, your father-in-law, follows the law. He gives you to his second son, Onan, as a wife. You're married again to your dead husband's brother. You didn't choose this. You weren't asked. But this is your only path to security, so you accept it. But Onan doesn't want to fulfill his duty. He doesn't want to father a child that will be considered his dead brother's heir rather than his own. So he uses you sexually because you're his wife now and he has rights to your body, but he prevents pregnancy. The Bible is quite explicit about this. He spilled his semen on the ground whenever he went in to his brother's wife. Night after night, he uses you. Night after night, he ensures you won't get pregnant. Because without a child, you remain in his household, under his control, but he doesn't have to sacrifice his own inheritance for his dead brother's name. This displeases God. Onan is struck down too, and he dies, and now you're widowed again. Twice widowed before you're 20 years old. 2 dead husbands and no children. Now Judah is afraid. 2 of his sons married you and both died. He's superstitious, thinking maybe you're cursed somehow. Maybe you're dangerous. He has 1 more son, Shelah, but Shelah is still young. Too young for marriage. So Judah makes a decision. He sends you back to your father's house. Go back to your father, he tells you. Live as a widow there until my son Shelah grows up. Then I'll give you to him as wife. But this is a lie. Judah has no intention of giving you to Shelah. He's afraid you'll cause Shelah's death too. So he sends you away with a false promise, and you have no choice but to go. Back to your father's house you go. But you're not a child anymore. You're a grown woman, a widow. You're another mouth to feed in your father's household. A burden, a reminder of failed marriages. You have no status, no prospects, no future. You're in limbo, waiting for a promise you begin to suspect will never be kept. Years pass. Shelah grows up. He reaches marriageable age. But Judah doesn't send for you, doesn't give you to Shelah as promised. The lie becomes obvious. You've been cast off, abandoned, left to live as a permanent dependent, a permanent shame. And then you hear news. Judah's wife has died. He's completed the mourning period and has gone up to Timnah for the sheep-shearing festival. He'll be passing near your town. An idea forms, a desperate, dangerous, shocking idea. But what choice do you have? You've been denied your rights under the law. You've been lied to and cast aside. Your future is a slow death of poverty and dependence. You have nothing to lose. You take off your widow's garments. You veil yourself heavily so you can't be recognized. And you sit by the road where Judah will pass at a place known for prostitutes waiting for clients. Your heart is pounding. This is dangerous. This is shameful, but it's also your only play, your only chance to force Judah to acknowledge his obligation to you. Judah sees you sitting there, veiled, and assumes you're a prostitute. He proposes hiring you. You don't refuse, but you bargain. What will he pay? He offers a young goat from his flock to be sent later. But you're not stupid. You demand collateral. Give me something as a pledge until you send the goat, you say. What pledge should I give you? He asks. You think quickly. Your seal and its cord and your staff. These items are like his signature, his identification. They're personal to him, recognizable. They're valuable as leverage. He agrees. He gives you his seal, cord, and staff. And then you do what you must do. You lie with your father-in-law, concealed by your veil, so he doesn't recognize you. You use your body as a tool of survival, as a way to obtain what the law promised you, but men denied you. Afterward you return home. You put your widow's garments back on. You hide the seal, cord, and staff carefully. And you wait. Judah sends his friend with the promised goat, looking for the prostitute to retrieve his pledge. But you're gone, vanished. When his friend asks the local men about the shrine prostitute who was there, they say there was no such woman. Judah is confused but lets it go. He's too embarrassed to press the issue. Better to lose the pledge items than to be publicly known for hiring a prostitute. 3 months pass, and then you discover you're pregnant. The plan worked, you've conceived. But now comes the dangerous part. Word spreads in your small community that Tamar, the widow living in her father's house, is pregnant. How scandalous! How shameful! She must have played the harlot. She's defiled herself. She's brought disgrace on her family, on Judah's family. The news reaches Judah. His response is immediate and harsh. Bring her out and let her be burned. Burned, executed, killed for sexual immorality. Never mind that his own sons used her and denied her rights. Never mind that he lied to her and cast her off. Never mind that he himself just hired what he thought was a prostitute. The double standard is breathtaking. Men can do as they please, but a woman who steps outside the narrow bounds of acceptable behavior? Death. They come to get you. They're going to drag you out and burn you alive. This is it. This is the moment where your gamble either pays off or costs you everything. But you're prepared. As they lead you out, you send a message to Judah. You send his seal, his cord, his staff. I am pregnant by the man who owns these. You say, recognize them. To whom do these belong? Imagine Judah in that moment, his personal items, his seal. Everyone recognizes them. Everyone knows they're his. And suddenly he understands. The prostitute by the road was Tamar, his daughter-in-law, the widow he cast off and lied to. He's trapped. He can't deny the items are his. He can't pretend he doesn't know what happened. Everyone is watching, waiting for his response. If he condemns you now, he condemns himself. He admits he hired a prostitute. He admits his items were payment. He admits his guilt. And here is where something remarkable happens. Judah, who is ready to have you burned alive, admits the truth. She is more righteous than I, he says publicly. She is more in the right than I am because I didn't give her to my son Shelah as I promised. You're spared. The death sentence is revoked. You've won. You've forced a powerful man to acknowledge your rights, to admit his failure, to recognize your claim. You did it through deception, yes. Through scandal, yes. But you did it. You survived. And more than that, you became an ancestor of King David. And through David, an ancestor of Jesus himself. Your name appears in the genealogy in the Gospel of Matthew. Tamar, the woman who had to disguise herself as a prostitute to obtain justice. But think about what this story reveals. Think about how powerless you were, that this was your only option. You couldn't take Judah to court. Women couldn't testify. You couldn't demand your rights publicly. Women had no platform. You couldn't refuse to return to your father's house. Women had to obey male authority. You couldn't support yourself independently. Women couldn't own property or work most professions. Your only tool was deception. Your only leverage was pregnancy. Your only hope was that Judah would choose honesty over saving face. One wrong move, if Judah had been more ruthless, if he'd denied the items were his, if he'd found a way to condemn you anyway, and you would have died, burned alive for the crime of trying to secure your own survival. This is what it meant to be a widow in biblical times. Complete vulnerability, complete dependence on men's mercy. And when that mercy was denied, As it was denied to you, you had to resort to desperate measures just to survive. The story of Tamar is in the Bible. It's right there in Genesis. But how often is it taught? How often is it discussed? How often do we sit with the horror of a society that would sentence a woman to death by fire for pregnancy outside marriage while allowing men to use prostitutes with impunity? Tamar's story is one of courage, yes. Cleverness, yes. Survival, yes. But it's also a story of systematic injustice, of a legal and social system that left women no good options, no paths to justice, no protection, no rights. And Tamar was one of the lucky ones. Her gamble worked. She survived. She obtained recognition of her rights, however belatedly. She bore twin sons, Perez and Zerah, who grew up to carry on the family line. She's remembered. But how many other women were in similar situations and didn't survive? How many widows were cast off and forgotten, dying in poverty and obscurity? How many women were executed for sexual infractions while men walked free? How many desperate women tried similar gambits and failed and died and were erased from history? We don't know their names. We don't know their stories. They're lost, forgotten, casualties of a system that valued women only for their reproductive capacity and their service to men. Tamar's tale is shocking, but it shouldn't be surprising. Not when you understand the complete powerlessness of women. Not when you understand that women had no rights, no voice, no protection apart from male relatives who might or might not choose to help them. Let that sink in. Feel the desperation that would drive someone to such a plan. Feel the terror of facing death by burning. Feel the relief when the gamble pays off and survival is secured. And then remember, this is just one story, one woman. There were thousands, millions, throughout history, women in impossible situations, making desperate choices, hoping to survive just one more day. Take a breath. Rest in the knowledge that you live in a different time, a time when women have rights, have voices, have options. These things are precious. These things are new. These things were won through the suffering and courage of countless women who came before. Now let's turn to another story. Another woman whose suffering reveals a different aspect of women's lives in biblical times. Let me tell you about Hannah. Her name was Hannah, and her story is found in the first book of Samuel. She was the wife of a man named Elkanah, and by all accounts he loved her. This in itself was unusual. Love wasn't typically the foundation of biblical marriages. But Elkanah loved Hannah. The text makes this clear. But Hannah had a problem that in biblical times was devastating beyond our modern comprehension. Hannah was barren. She could not have children. Now, you might think, well, that's sad, but surely it's not the end of the world. Surely there are other ways to find meaning and purpose in life. Surely her value as a person didn't rest entirely on her ability to reproduce. But you would be wrong. In ancient Israel, a woman's entire worth was measured by her fertility. Her ability to bear children, especially sons, was the only real contribution she could make to her family and society. If she couldn't do that, she was considered worthless, failed, cursed by God. Imagine being Hannah. Imagine being a woman who's been married for years, and every month your period comes. Every month, that blood is a reminder. You are not pregnant. You have failed again, month after month after month, year after year after year. You watch other women in your community swell with pregnancy. You watch them give birth. You watch them nurse their babies. You watch them receive congratulations and celebration. You watch their status rise with each child they produce, especially each son. And you remain childless, barren, the subject of whispers and pitying looks and judgment, because everyone knows that barrenness is a punishment from God. It must be. Why else would God close your womb? What have you done wrong? What sin have you committed that God would curse you this way? You pray, oh, how you pray. You beg God to open your womb, to give you a child, to end this torment. But month after month, year after year, the answer is silence, blood, emptiness. And then there's Peninnah, Elkanah's other wife. Yes, other wife, because Elkanah is polygamous as many men were. He has 2 wives, Hannah, whom he loves, and Peninnah, who has given him children, multiple children, sons and daughters. Everything you cannot provide. Living with Peninnah is torture. She's your rival in the most literal sense. She has what you desperately want. She succeeded where you failed. She's valuable in the way you're not. And Peninnah knows it. She knows her power. She knows her position is secure because of her children. So she uses it against you. The Bible says she provoked Hannah. She taunted her, mocked her, reminded her constantly of her failure. Imagine sitting at meals together, because everyone eats together in the household. Peninnah's children are all around, laughing, playing, calling her mother, and Peninnah makes sure you notice. Make sure you feel the absence of your own children. Make sure the knife of your barrenness twists a little deeper every single day. Still no baby, Hannah? Peninnah might say sweetly. Such a shame. I'm pregnant again, actually. Due in about 6 months. That'll be my 6th. Or is it 7th? I lose count. You try to ignore her. You try to focus on other things. But there's no escape. You live in the same house. You share the same husband. You're bound to her and her cruelty by proximity and circumstance. Elkanah, to his credit, tries to comfort you. Hannah, why are you weeping? He asks. Why don't you eat? Why are you so sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? He means well. He loves you. He doesn't understand why his love isn't enough. But the question itself reveals the gulf between his experience and yours. Am I not more to you than 10 sons? As if this is about preferring children over him. As if this is a simple matter of priorities. He doesn't understand. He can't understand. He's a man. His worth isn't tied to reproduction. His identity isn't defined by fertility. He's valuable as a person, as a husband, as a community member, regardless of whether he has children. His body isn't seen as failed or cursed. He isn't subjected to daily mockery and scorn. So no, Elkanah, you're not more to Hannah than 10 sons. Not because she doesn't love you, but because sons are her only path to value, respect, security. Sons are her only defense against Peninnah's cruelty. Sons are her only proof that she's not cursed, not failed, not worthless. Every year, Elkanah's family makes a pilgrimage to Shiloh, to the temple, to worship and make sacrifices. And every year this trip is agony for Hannah, because Elkanah, in his kindness, gives portions of the sacrifice meat to Peninnah and all her children 1 portion for each person. But to Hannah he gives a double portion because he loves her and feels sorry for her. This gesture of love only highlights her shame. one person, one barren woman, while Peninnah receives portions for herself and each of her many children. The contrast is painful, public, humiliating, and at the temple, at the very place of worship, at the very presence of God, Peninnah's provocation intensifies. She makes sure to pray loudly for Hannah. "O Lord, please help poor Hannah. Please open her womb. She's so desperate for children." False pity dripping with malice, every word designed to wound. Hannah weeps she can't eat. She's crushed by the weight of her barrenness, her public humiliation, her private grief. The hopelessness of year after year of unanswered prayers. But then something shifts. A desperate determination forms. She goes to the temple, to the doorway where Eli the priest sits, and she prays, but not quietly, not decorously. She prays with her whole body. Her lips move frantically. Her body shakes. Tears stream down her face. She's past caring what anyone thinks, past maintaining dignity. She's desperate, and her prayer is a desperate prayer. In her prayer, she makes a vow, a terrible, heartbreaking vow. "O Lord, if you will give me a son, I will give him back to you. I will dedicate him to your service all the days of his life. Just please, please give me a son." Think about what she's promising. She's so desperate for a child that she's willing to give that child away. If God will just let her be pregnant, just let her carry a baby to term, just let her give birth and nurse an infant and have those few precious years of being a mother, she'd give him up. She'd hand him over to the temple to serve God forever. This is the depth of her desperation. Not just to have a child, but to prove that she can, to prove that she's not cursed, to prove that her womb works, to have that brief window of time where she's not barren Hannah, but Hannah the mother, even if it means losing the child afterward. Eli the priest is watching her. He sees her lips moving, her body swaying, but hears no words. He assumes she's drunk. "How long will you be drunk?" He scolds, "Put away your wine." Even in her moment of desperate prayer, she's misunderstood, judged, accused, because that's what being a woman was: constant judgment, constant suspicion, constant dismissal. But Hannah gathers herself enough to respond. "No, my lord, I am not drunk. I am a woman deeply troubled. I've been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Don't think I'm worthless. I've been praying out of great anguish and grief." Eli's response softens. "Go in peace," he says, "and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." Something changes in Hannah in that moment. She stops weeping. She eats. She returns to her family. The text says, her face was no longer sad. She has hope again. Fragile, tentative hope that maybe this time, maybe this year, maybe God has heard. And God had heard. The text says, the Lord remembered her, as if God had forgotten, as if Hannah's suffering had been beneath divine notice until now. But whether forgotten or simply delayed, the answer finally comes. Hannah conceives. After years of barrenness, after years of shame and mockery and prayer, she becomes pregnant. Can you imagine the moment she realizes it? The moment her period doesn't come? The moment morning sickness begins? The overwhelming relief and joy and terror? She carries the pregnancy carefully, protectively. Every day is a prayer that nothing goes wrong, that this miracle isn't taken away, that she makes it to term, that the baby lives. She gives birth to a son. She names him Samuel, which means heard by God, because God heard her prayer. Finally, after all those years, God heard, and now she's a mother. She has a son. She can hold her head up. She can smile at Peninnah without flinching. She can feel valuable, worthy, blessed. She has proof that she's not cursed, proof that her body works, proof that God doesn't hate her. She nurses Samuel. She cares for him. She watches him grow. These are precious years, sweet years. Years she thought she'd never have. She's a mother, finally, and it's everything she hoped for. But hanging over all of it is her vow, the promise she made in her desperation. She promised to give him to God, to dedicate him to temple service, to hand him over while he's still young. When Samuel is weaned, probably around age 2 or 3, when children typically stopped nursing in ancient times, Hannah knows it's time. Time to keep her promise. Time to give up her son. She dresses him in the best clothes she has. She prepares gifts to bring to the temple. She makes the journey to Shiloh with her husband. And she brings her little boy, her miracle, her answered prayer, her only child, to the temple. She finds Eli the priest, the same one who blessed her years ago. "Do you remember me?" she asks. "I'm the woman who stood here praying years ago. I prayed for this child, and the Lord gave me what I asked. Now I'm giving him to the Lord. For as long as he lives, he'll be dedicated to the Lord." And she leaves him there. She leaves her 3-year-old son at the temple to be raised by the priests, to serve in the house of the Lord. She walks away from the only child she has, the child she prayed for year after year, the child who made her finally feel worthy. Can you imagine? Can you imagine carrying a baby for 9 months, giving birth, nursing him, watching him take his first steps, hearing his first words, falling in love with every part of him, and then handing him over to strangers and walking away? This is what Hannah's desperation drove her to promise. This is the price she paid for ending her barrenness. She got to be a mother for 3 years. 3 years out of all the years of shame and mockery and grief. And then she had to give it up. The text says she prayed a beautiful prayer of thanksgiving after leaving Samuel. A prayer of joy and praise to God. And maybe she did feel joy. Maybe she felt peace about keeping her vow. Maybe she believed this was right and good. But she also must have felt the loss, the ache of empty arms, the silence where a child's laughter used to be, the knowledge that she'll see him only once a year during the annual pilgrimage, that he'll grow up without her, that other people will teach him to talk, to read, to understand the world. She goes on to have more children. The text tells us she had 3 more sons and 2 daughters. God blessed her fertility after she gave up Samuel. So eventually her house is full of children. Eventually she has the large family she always wanted. But that first child, that miracle child, she gave away, because that was the price of proving she wasn't cursed, the price of ending years of shame and mockery, the price of having value in a society that measured women only by their ability to produce offspring. Hannah's story is often taught as a beautiful example of answered prayer, of God's faithfulness, of dedication and devotion, and it is those things. But it's also a story of the crushing pressure placed on women to be fertile, the complete devastation of barrenness, the daily torment of living with a rival wife, the desperation that would drive a woman to promise away her future child just for the chance to conceive. In a society where women had value only as mothers, being unable to mother was a kind of death, a living death of shame and worthlessness and cruel mockery. Hannah's suffering was systematic, cultural, religious. She suffered because the entire weight of her society's expectations rested on her ability to reproduce, and her body wouldn't cooperate. Think of all the Hannahs throughout history, all the women who couldn't conceive, who were divorced for barrenness, who were replaced with second wives, who were blamed and shamed and told they must have done something to deserve God's punishment, who prayed desperate prayers and made terrible bargains just to have a child, just to matter, just to have worth. Hannah's heartbreak wasn't just personal, it was structural, built into the very fabric of a society that told women their only purpose was childbearing, and then scorned them when they couldn't fulfill that purpose. Rest now. Breathe. The weight of these stories is heavy, the suffering real and documented. These weren't just hypothetical hardships. These were real women's lives, real pain, real desperation. There's one more story. One more woman we need to meet, and this one is the darkest of all. This one shows us the absolute worst of what could happen to women in biblical times. The story of the woman with no name. This story comes from Judges chapter 19, and I need to warn you, it's disturbing, deeply disturbing. It's one of the darkest passages in all of Scripture, and it reveals just how little women's lives were valued, how disposable women were, how their safety, their dignity, their very lives meant nothing when compared to male honor. The woman in this story doesn't have a name. We never learn it. She's referred to only as the concubine. A concubine was essentially a secondary wife, lower status than a full wife, but still a sexual partner, still bound to a man. She belonged to a Levite, a man from the priestly tribe. The story begins with this woman leaving the Levite and returning to her father's house. The text says she was unfaithful to him, or in some translations, became angry with him. We don't know exactly what happened. Maybe she left because he was abusive. Maybe she couldn't take the treatment anymore. Maybe she simply asserted herself in some way that was unacceptable. Whatever the reason, she goes home to her father. She's there for 4 months. 4 months of refuge, of safety, of not being under the Levite's control. But then he comes after her. Not because he loves her, not because he's sorry, but because she's his property and he wants her back. He travels to her father's house to speak kindly to her and persuade her to return. That phrase, speak kindly, suggests she needs persuading, suggests she doesn't want to go back. Her father welcomes the Levite. They spend days eating and drinking together, celebrating like old friends. The father seems happy to hand his daughter back over. No one asks the woman what she wants. No one cares about her preference. She's property being returned to its owner. Finally, the Levite decides it's time to go home. He loads up his donkeys, takes his servant, and brings the concubine along. They begin the journey back to his home. But as evening approaches, they need to find a place to stay for the night. They pass by Jebus, the city that would later become Jerusalem, but the Levite doesn't want to stay there because it's inhabited by foreigners. He wants to stay in an Israelite city among his own people, where he expects to be safe. So they continue to Jeba, a city of the tribe of Benjamin. They arrive at Jeba and sit in the city square, waiting for someone to offer them hospitality. In ancient culture, hospitality to travelers was considered sacred. You were supposed to welcome strangers, give them food and shelter. It was both a moral duty and a practical necessity in a world without hotels. but no one in Juba offers them hospitality. They sit there as evening becomes night, as the people of the city come and go, and no one invites them in. It's an ominous sign, a violation of basic human decency. Finally, an old man, a foreigner himself, living in Juba, but not from there, sees them and offers them shelter. He takes them to his house. He feeds them, gives them a place to rest. For a moment it seems everything will be fine, but then there's a pounding on the door. Men from the city, wicked men, the text calls them, have surrounded the house. They're shouting, demanding that the old man send out his guest. Bring out the man who came to your house so we can have sex with him, they demand. This is gang rape they're proposing, homosexual gang rape, a horrific violation not just of the Levite, but of the sacred duty of hospitality. They want to humiliate him, violate him, destroy him. The old man is horrified. He goes out to confront the mob, and here's what he says. No, my friends, don't be so vile. Since this man is my guest, don't do this outrageous thing. Look, here's my virgin daughter and his concubine. I will bring them out to you now, and you can use them and do to them whatever you wish. But as for this man, don't do such an outrageous thing. Read that again. Let it sink in. The old man offers his own daughter, his virgin daughter, and the Levite's concubine to this mob. Offers them to be gang-raped instead, because violating women is somehow less outrageous than violating a man. Because women's bodies are expendable in a way men's bodies are not. The mob isn't interested in his offer. They want the Levite. They keep demanding. The situation is escalating. And then the Levite makes a choice. He grabs his concubine, the woman he came to retrieve, the woman who didn't want to return with him in the first place. He takes her and throws her outside to the mob, throws her out, to be gang-raped, to save himself. And the men of Juba take her. They seize her, and all night long they rape her. The text says they abused her throughout the night. Multiple men, all night, hour after hour after hour, raping her, beating her, torturing her. Can you imagine her terror, her pain, her prayers for death? This woman who just wanted to go home to her father, who was forced to return with a man she didn't want to be with, who ended up in a strange city, in a stranger's house, thrown to a violent mob by the very man who claimed her as his. All night the abuse continues. All night she suffers. Inside the house, the Levite is safe, comfortable, probably sleeping, while outside his concubine is being destroyed. As dawn breaks, the men finally release her, or maybe she escapes, or maybe they simply tire of her, but she somehow makes it back to the house where her master is staying. She crawls to the door, she reaches for the threshold, and there, at the doorway, she collapses. In the morning, the Levite gets up. He's ready to continue his journey. He opens the door to leave, and there she is, his concubine lying at the threshold, her hands on the doorstep, broken, brutalized, maybe already dead, maybe dying. His response? Get up, we're leaving. No concern, no horror, no rushing to help her, no tender care for her injuries. Just get up, we need to go. She doesn't answer. She can't answer. So he puts her on his donkey, loads her up like cargo, and heads home. When he gets home, he does something that demonstrates just how little she mattered to him as a person. He takes a knife, and he cuts her body into 12 pieces. 12 pieces. He dismembers her corpse, and sends the pieces throughout all the territories of Israel as a message about the crime that was committed. She becomes a political statement, a rallying cry. Her brutalized body is cut apart and distributed to make a point about the wickedness of Juba. She's not mourned. She's not buried with dignity. She's not even named. She's just a body, a prop in a man's outrage about how he was treated. The tribes of Israel gather. They're horrified by the story. They demand justice. Not for the woman, no one mentions seeking justice for her, but for the violation of hospitality, for the threat to the Levite, for the crime against proper social order. A war breaks out. The tribe of Benjamin defends the men of Gibeah. The other tribes fight against Benjamin. Thousands of men die in battle. Eventually, Benjamin is nearly wiped out. The city of Gibeah is destroyed. All this violence, all this death, all this war, and never once does anyone say her name. Never once does anyone explicitly mourn her. Never once does anyone suggest that maybe, just maybe, the Levite should face consequences for throwing her to the mob in the first place. She's the most invisible victim imaginable. Abused by her master, thrown to a mob, gang-raped all night, left to die at a doorstep, dismembered after death and never even named. Her suffering sparks a war, but it's not about her. It's never about her. It's about male honor, tribal loyalty, social order. She's just a woman, a concubine. Property, less than human in the eyes of everyone in this story. This story is in the Bible, in the book of Judges. It's scripture. It's preserved as part of the sacred text. And yes, it's presented as an example of extreme wickedness. The chapter ends by saying, "In those days Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit." It's meant to show how depraved society had become. But what does it reveal? It reveals that women were so devalued that throwing one to a mob seemed like a reasonable solution to a dangerous situation. It reveals that a woman's rape and death was less important than a man's safety. It reveals that women could be used, abused, and discarded without anyone thinking to ask their names or honor their humanity. This is the darkest story, the most brutal example. But it's not an aberration. It's an extreme point on a continuum. The same continuum that included marriage at 12, legal status as property, forced silence, monthly exile, dangerous childbirth, and endless labor. All of it from the seemingly mundane to the horrifically violent flowed from the same source. The belief that women were less than men, less human, less valuable, less worthy of protection, dignity, and basic human rights. The woman in this story never got justice, never got to tell her side, never got to say what she wanted or feared or felt. She was acted upon by every man in the story, her father who gave her away, the Levite who reclaimed her, the old man who offered her to the mob, the Levite again who threw her out, the mob who destroyed her, and the Levite one final time who dismembered her body. She had no agency, no voice, no protection, no value beyond her utility to men. And when she was used up and destroyed, no one mourned her as a person. No one said, "A woman died here. A human being suffered and died." This matters. She's every woman in biblical times who suffered without being seen, who died without being mourned, who endured horrors without anyone caring. She's the unnamed, uncounted, unvalued women throughout history who were treated as things rather than people. Rest now. Breathe deeply. This story is hard. It should be hard. It should disturb us, because this is what happened when women had no rights, no voice, no protection. This is where systematic devaluation leads to violence, to abuse, to women being thrown to mobs and then cut apart and their suffering never even acknowledged. We remember her now. We say, "You mattered. Your suffering mattered. Your life had value even though no one around you recognized it. You deserved better. You deserved safety, dignity, kindness, protection. You deserved to live." We remember the woman with no name. And so we come to the end of our journey, a journey through ancient lands and ancient lives, through the daily struggles and the devastating losses, through water jars and grinding stones, through childbirth and exile, through the absence of voice and the presence of violence. We've walked in the sandals of women who lived thousands of years ago, women whose names we mostly don't know, women whose struggles are rarely discussed, women who endured hardships we can barely imagine. The weight of those water jars, the endless grinding of grain, marriage at 12 years old, childbirth without medical care, monthly exile for menstruation, no legal rights, no voice in court or temple, no education, no choice, no escape. And the specific women we met, Tamar, forced to desperate measures just to survive. Hannah, tormented for her barrenness, finally granted a child only to give him away. The woman with no name, thrown to a mob, and then cut apart. Her suffering never acknowledged, her humanity never recognized. These stories are difficult, heavy, hard to hear. But they're important. They're part of the historical record, part of Scripture itself. They show us the reality of women's lives in biblical times, not the sanitized versions we usually hear. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, as these stories settle into your subconscious, maybe you'll wake up tomorrow with a deeper appreciation for the time you live in, for the rights you have, for the choices available to you, for the medical care that protects you, for the legal system that recognizes your humanity, for the education you can pursue, for the voice you're allowed to have. These things are precious. These things are new. For most of human history, women lived like the women we've discussed tonight, in powerlessness, in silence, in suffering. The progress we've made, the rights women have gained, came through the courage and sacrifice of countless women who fought for something better, who demanded to be seen as fully human, who refused to accept that their suffering was inevitable or acceptable. We honor those women tonight, the biblical women whose stories are preserved, and all the women whose stories were lost, who suffered in silence, who died unnamed, who endured and survived and somehow found moments of joy and love and meaning despite everything. May their struggles not be forgotten. May their stories be told. May we never take for granted the freedoms we have, the protections we enjoy, the dignity we're afforded. And may you rest well tonight, wrapped in the comfort of your modern life, grateful for the distance between your world and theirs, but always remembering that for most of history, this was women's reality. Sleep peacefully. Dream gently. And when you wake, perhaps you'll see the blessings of your life with fresh eyes, the running water from your tap, the education you received, the choices you can make, the voice you're allowed to use, the safety you largely take for granted. These are gifts, hard-won gifts, paid for by the suffering of generations of women who didn't have them, but dreamed that someday women might. Let yourself drift now. Let your breathing slow. Let your body relax completely. Feel the comfort of your bed, the warmth of your blankets, the safety of your space. You're safe. You're valued. You're free in ways those ancient women never were. Rest well. Sleep deeply. And carry with you the knowledge of how far we've come and how precious that progress is. Good night.